I was halfway through unclogging a jammed sorter arm when I saw my name misspelled again on the project banner. Congratulations to the automation team, led by Dennis Carter. 2 goddamn years of blood, sweat, and solder, and they couldn't even spell my name right. That's when I knew this wasn't glory. This was just another Tuesday in corporate purgatory, where your reward for solving the unsolvable is getting your lunch stolen from the break room fridge again. I'd spent 24 months duct taping miracles together for a logistics firm so bloated with middle managers, it looked like a pyramid scheme with coffee mugs. I was the lead systems integration specialist, which meant when something broke, and something always broke, it was my mess to clean up. And yet, the only time I got direct credit was when the printer jammed and nobody else knew how to open the damn paper tray. Most days started with a quick sync meeting that morphed into a blame marathon. Ron from procurement would drone on about budget overruns, while Janet from marketing demanded to know why the robots weren't more photogenic. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding back-end logic at 3 a.m. and praying the warehouse floor didn't eat another drone pallet mid-scan. They said we were building the future. I was starting to think I was just building a coffin for my sanity. Now here's the kicker. They kept trying to make me use the official sync modules from our contracted supplier. Those things overheated if you looked at them wrong. After the third prototype went up in smoke, I said screw it and slotted in the one I'd built 5 years ago in my garage. My own custom precision controller, sleek, stable, and smarter than anyone in the exec wing. It was the only thing that worked. Nobody asked questions because nobody cared how the job got done, only that they had a shiny graph for the quarterly review. And speaking of people not caring, if you're listening to this and you've made it this far, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button. Yeah, you. Because 97% of folks who hear these stories don't subscribe, and I'm out here trying to hit my first ever 10,000 subs without selling protein powder or pretending to meditate in Bali. So help a gal out, will ya? Back to the grind. I named my controller Ruby, not because I'm sentimental, because she bled for this project same as me. Ruby was my silent partner in every success. While corporate peacocks strutted through post-launch cocktail parties, was Ruby translating 6 different machine languages into a single symphony of steel and speed. Nobody noticed her. They just assumed she was part of the furniture like me, but I kept track. Oh, I kept track. I logged every deployment, every data sync, every system spike she absorbed without complaint. And I watched. I watched them take credit, watched them hold meetings I wasn't invited to, watched the CTO get quoted in Forbes about his team's revolutionary approach to modular logistics. His team, right? Even when Ruby warned me she was running at 96% stress load, I told her to hold on. One more milestone, one more fake smile. One more day of pretending I wasn't one sprained cable away from walking out. What kept me going? Pride, and maybe a little spite. Okay, a lot of spite, because every time they tried to sideline me, I thought about what was really running their shiny new empire. A black box about the size of a cereal carton, built in my garage, paid for with my own damn money, registered to my LLC, and they never asked. They never once asked who owned Ruby, who maintained her, who updated her firmware between coffee breaks. She just worked, so they ignored her. Just like they ignored me. I had no idea back then just how deliciously that oversight would bite them in the ass. But I was getting close. The end was coming, and I wasn't the one who'd be redundant. Back when I still thought unpaid overtime was a sign of dedication and not a slow-motion mugging, I spent nights tinkering in a rented storage unit behind a Jiffy Lube. It smelled like motor oil and despair, but the rent was $89 a month and the walls didn't talk back. That's where I built Ruby, version 1, precision synchronization controller that could make a warehouse full of half-broken bots dance like the damn Riquettes. She didn't just solve problems, she prevented them, and I knew from the jump she was something special. So I wrapped her in an LLC. Officially, Carter Logic Systems, Inc., owned by one Denise Carter, trademarked, filed, sheltered like a paranoid prepper's bunker. My dad always told me, if you build something that can change the world, make sure the bastards can't steal it. He was talking about his chili recipe, but it stuck. By the time I joined this company, I'd already learned my lesson about NDAs and IP theft. Every job before had tried to vacuum out my brain and leave the husk. So when I brought Ruby into the warehouse, I didn't say, hey, here's my invention. I said, your modules keep overheating. Let me try something custom. They let me. Because management didn't care how the clock ticked as long as they could read the time. And Ruby, she ticked like a Swiss watch duct taped to a T800. Here's what nobody noticed. There were no procurement forms, no asset registration, no PO numbers, no supply chain codes, no build to department. She came in through my backpack. I updated her firmware on my laptop. I wrote the diagnostic scripts in my LLC's private dev environment. I never once asked for reimbursement because the second they wrote me a check, that box would have become company property. And I wasn't about to let a bunch of quarterly report meat puppets slap a logo on my baby. Still, I played the game. I stayed quiet, played dumb. When Janet from marketing asked what that little blinking lunchbox thing was, I said, just a controller patch. It helps keep the bots from getting dizzy. She nodded like she understood a word of that. One who did pay attention was Ali, one of the new hires in DevOps. Kid had energy like a golden retriever hopped up on Bang energy drinks. One day, while we were patching a routing issue on Dock 6, he watched Ruby humming along and said, we'd be so screwed if anything ever happened to that little box. I laughed it off. Yeah, let's hope it doesn't grow legs and walk. But his words sat with me like a slow burn behind the ribs, because he was right. Every update I wrote for the warehouse AI, every sensor calibration, every predictive traffic shuffle, it all came through Ruby. Every other system was an instrument. She was the damn conductor. And the longer she ran flawlessly, the more they forgot she existed. Good, let them forget, because I had the original design files stored offline. I had the manufacturing specs printed on archival paper and sealed in a safe deposit box. I had the source code backed up in cold storage in 3 different cities. And I had the legal paperwork that said, this tech belongs to Carter Logic Systems. Not Denise the employee, Denise the owner. They thought I was a cog in their machine. They didn't realize I was the machine. And I built the off switch myself. All I had to do was wait. Let them get comfy. Let them bet the farm on a system they didn't even understand. I didn't need revenge. I needed patience. And when it came to my work, I had that in spades. Demo day was a goddamn circus, the good kind, if you're the type that finds joy in watching your abusers set themselves on fire for applause. The warehouse was spotless. PR teams hovered like anxious mayflies, armed with drones and rehearsed smiles. And the system? Oh, it purred. Ruby synced the entire fulfillment floor with surgical grace, robots gliding, inventory flowing, predictive loading algorithms making even the crustiest logistics vet whistle like he just saw the face of God in a barcode. Executives clapped, clients gushed. Someone passed around a bottle of Veuve, and I sipped mine with a grin that didn't quite touch my eyes. I'd done it. 2 years of pulling miracles out of silicone and spite, and the system was flawless. But deep down, something tasted off, like drinking expensive champagne from a styrofoam cup. Then came the silence. The next morning, no sync invite, no review meetings, no next phase strategy call, just dead air. By Thursday, I was lurking outside conference room B with a cold cup of burnt coffee and the distinct feeling of déjà vu. Inside, behind the half-fogged glass, I saw Ron, Janet, and that slick VP from corporate whose handshake always felt like a used car salesman apologizing in advance. She did great, someone was saying. Let's be honest, her part's done. The system runs itself now. You sure she won't make noise? That was Janet, queen of throwing people under the bus with a peppermint smile. Ron snorted, she's not the type. Besides, we're offering her the standard exit, no fuss. The room laughed, not evil laughter. Worse, indifferent. The kind of laugh you give when discussing a busted printer or a week-old sandwich in the breakroom fridge. I was neither to them, I was less. I walked away, finished my coffee, and went back to my desk like I hadn't just been ghosted by people who'd once called me indispensable. Friday, 9:03 a.m., the calendar pinged. Subject, HR transition discussion location. Small conference 2 duration. 15 mins, they didn't even put my name on it. Michelle from HR greeted me like she was hosting a gender reveal party. She had a folder, a form smile, and a pre-chewed script. Just want to say thank you for all your incredible work, Denise. You've truly set the foundation for the next chapter of this company. I nodded. There's no severance package because technically your role was project-based, though we understand it wasn't framed that way when you started. But this transition should be smooth. You'll have access to email through the weekend. IT will collect your badge Monday. Smooth, like a chalk outline. She slid the exit papers toward me. No mention of Ruby, no asset inventory checklist, no tech audit. Nothing but a stack of HR boilerplate and a pen that didn't work until I smacked it on the table 3 times. I signed calmly, one page after another, each stroke slicing through the last thread of illusion I'd held onto. I was done. But Ruby wasn't. Nobody had mentioned the controller. Nobody had listed hardware assets. No one had asked for passwords or access logs. In their haste to crown themselves the geniuses behind the success, they forgot the most important piece. The one still humming quietly in Dock Bay 3. The one that blinked a heartbeat every 30 seconds, waiting for the renewal code only I could provide. I stood, smiled at Michelle, and said, thanks for everything. Then I walked out of that office with an empty badge, a full mind, and the sharp realization that I wasn't angry anymore. No, anger was loud. This was quieter. Colder? This was the moment before the fuse hits the powder. I didn't cry when I got home. Didn't scream, didn't throw a lamp, didn't burn my old company fleece jacket in the backyard like some kind of exorcism. I just made a cup of coffee, stared out the window at my neighbor's busted lawn flamingo, and let the silence wrap around me like smoke from an engine fire. That's what it felt like, getting laid off after building their golden goose. Like being ejected from a speeding car and watching it keep driving without realizing you were the one keeping the engine cool. But instead of unraveling, I opened my laptop. Carter Logic Systems, Inc. was still alive and well, filed under the state of Ohio with all the bells and legal whistles. It had one employee, one product, and one very expensive client that didn't know it was a client yet. I opened a blank doc and started writing. License agreement for use of CLS Alpha Sync Controller V3.2 licensor. Carter Logic Systems, Inc. Licensee, redacted Company of Ungrateful Bastards, LLC terms, $48,000/month. Non-transferable, non-duplicable, enforced via passive lockout after 30 days of non-renewal. Remote deactivation authorized without warning. Payment due in advance. No refunds. No exceptions. It felt like building a guillotine out of paperwork. By midnight, I had the whole contract ready, tight, clean, and sharp as a blade. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't going to launch a legal war with dollar store armor. So I paid a visit to someone who loved contracts more than I did. Andrea, my old college roommate turned tech IP attorney, now operating out of a boutique firm that had sued two Fortune 500s before lunch last Tuesday. She read through it while crunching popcorn and sipping La Croix, eyebrows slowly climbing with each clause. "You actually built this thing?" she asked. "Every chip, every line of code. I even soldered the first housing by hand." She gave a low whistle. "Then yeah, this contract'll hold. Especially since they never paid for it, logged it, or got you to sign a damn thing about tech ownership. You still got the original blueprints?" I pulled out the flash drive. She grinned. "This is the IP equivalent of a loaded shotgun. You want me to send it for you?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I've got one last thing to tweak first." Back home, I opened Ruby's root command interface and wrote a subroutine, heartbeat check. Every 30 days, Ruby would ping my remote key server for renewal code. If the ping failed, she'd issue a soft shutdown of non-critical systems for 48 hours. If it failed twice, full lockout, systems halt, data frozen, drones grounded, no explosions, no sparks. Just everything stopping like someone pulled the soul out of a machine. She'd give them just enough chaos to panic, but not enough to sue. And if they tried to rewire her manually, the core watchdog would wipe all firmware and scream in binary until hell froze. By 3 a.m. Update was live. I poured another cup of coffee, hands steady as stone. Ruby was still running, still mine, still holding their empire together like invisible duct tape. But now she was on a leash, a silk thread, looped tight around their necks, and I held the scissors. They had no idea what I'd just done. And that made it even better. The first press release hit like a firework made of smug, revolutionizing fulfillment. Company name unveils autonomous logistics system, built entirely in-house, huh? They plastered it across LinkedIn, Twitter, industry blogs, even a fawning puff piece on Tech Harvest, complete with glossy shots of robots gliding through aisles like synchronized swimmers in a ballet choreographed by caffeine and cocaine. The CEO called it a triumph of internal innovation. The VP of Ops gave interviews like he personally hand-coded the control loop while dodging sniper fire. Not one mention of me or Ruby. But Ruby didn't need applause, she just needed power. And the heartbeat code I wrote was quietly ticking away, one full week into its 30-day countdown. Like a mechanical whisper nobody could hear, just beneath their champagne toasts and victory laps. I let them have their party. I watched the live stream of the launch gala from my couch, in sweatpants, with my cat kneading holes in a Target throw blanket. They unveiled a giant 3D model of the fulfillment pipeline, complete with little cardboard bots doing laps around a fake loading dock. A marketing intern was crying. Ron was on stage pretending he hadn't once asked me if sync was short for synchronized swimming. I gave it 3 more days. Then I printed the licensing agreement on thick ivory stock, signed in blue ink with a fountain pen, because if you're going to serve someone a bombshell, you might as well make it feel expensive. I put it in a black envelope and mailed it directly to legal attention, Meredith Halloran, General Counsel. Inside was the contract. And a single post-it note, "Ruby is watching. Renewal due in 19 days. By the time they opened it, PR train was barreling down the tracks. Magazine interviews, corporate keynote slots, an invite to a supply chain summit in Austin. The rollout was no longer just a tech success, it was their whole public identity, their meal ticket, and every single second of it depended on a piece of hardware they didn't own. I know exactly when they got the letter, because 2 days later I got the first confused email. "Hi Denise, hope you're well. Quick question. Was there ever a formal asset transfer for the CLS module used in the Phase Roman 4 rollout? Just tying up some documentation for our records. Thanks, best, Megan from Finance." I didn't respond. The next day, a calendar invite, IP ownership follow-up 15-min check-in, declined. Then a voicemail from some poor paralegal named Greg, trying to sound casual, while asking if any prototypes provided during your employment were later formalized into company assets. He sounded like he just Googled what a prototype was 10 minutes before calling. I gave them another 4 days. That's when the emails turned from polite to panicked. "Urgent, IP licensing concerns immediate attention, requested. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding asset ownership. Please confirm whether the module you provided remains protected under your LLC. If so, we'd appreciate a conversation to clarify next steps." I didn't respond to that one either. Instead, I pulled up Ruby's diagnostics console and watched her stats. Load balancing, stable. Sync efficiency, 97%. Heartbeat signal pinging every 6 hours. Quiet, predictable, obedient for now. They thought silence meant weakness. They mistook my absence for irrelevance. But every tick of that controller's internal clock was a countdown, and when it hit 0, there wouldn't be fireworks. There'd be chaos. Cold satisfaction doesn't come from screaming, "I told you so." It comes from knowing you don't have to scream. You just wait and watch them learn. By the time week 3 rolled around, the arrogance started leaking. I knew it was coming. These people had spent years climbing a ladder made of buzzwords and fake deliverables. They weren't about to admit they'd built their empire on a box they didn't own. Not when the client, one of the largest logistics contractors on the eastern seaboard, was set to visit for a full-scale demo in 10 days. 10 days until the suits in tailored polos and boat shoes showed up with clipboards, cameras, and seven-figure contract extensions. And right now, every inch of that warehouse still ran on my heartbeat. The execs circled the wagons fast. Word got out that someone from legal had concerns about Denise Carter's proprietary module. Someone dug through procurement logs and found nothing. No PO number, no invoice, no documentation. It was like Ruby had been conjured out of thin air. She hadn't. She just walked in on her own 2 legs, tucked into a battered Samsonite backpack, courtesy of someone they never bothered to ask about twice. At first, they tried denial. "Of course we own all her work," the CTO barked in an emergency meeting, according to someone who still owed me lunch. "She built it while employed. That's how this works." Then the IP council showed up with a printed copy of my employment contract, complete with 3 separate carve-outs for pre-existing intellectual property. All signed, all valid, and all accompanied by the founding documents for Carter Logic Systems, filed 4 years before I took their crappy job. That's when the tone shifted from confident to pissed. They brought in IT to see if they could clone the device, reverse engineer it, replace it with a newer vendor-supplied sync unit. One of the senior engineers, a guy named Dave, who once asked me if he could use Ruby to sync his smart fridge, stood in the middle of the warehouse and muttered the words that sealed their fate. "We can't replicate it. Not in time." Apparently, he'd tried to spoof Ruby's signal with a diagnostic dongle from another system, and it had triggered a shutdown cascade that took out 3 aisle drones and a whole pallet of children's Halloween costumes. No fire, thankfully, just a lot of very confused robots and one kid-sized vampire cape that got stuck in a conveyor belt like some kind of fabric blood sacrifice. When the CFO heard what happened, he apparently demanded to know why a critical system didn't have backups. That's when someone finally said it out loud, because she never gave us the blueprint. Meanwhile, I was making waffles. Literally, in my kitchen, watching maple syrup spiral down the edges of a homemade Belgian stack, while my inbox lit up with increasingly desperate variations of just a quick call, an urgent clarification needed. The client, let's call them Eastland Freight Co., was still under the illusion that everything was peaky. Their internal team had even sent over some light integration requests, expecting seamless onboarding in the final week. Corporate couldn't afford a hiccup, not with press already sniffing around for rollout interviews, not with stockholders floating the idea of expanding the tech to other fulfillment centers, not with Ruby blinking patiently in the server rack, waiting for heartbeat code she would never get. I didn't gloat. Gloating is for amateurs. I just watched the clock and made another pot of coffee. 10 days left. Tick, tick, tick. The email came in with all the charm of a passive-aggressive Christmas card. "Hi, Denise. We hope this message finds you well. After reviewing the license terms, we're eager to find a collaborative solution. Perhaps there's a mutually beneficial path forward that avoids legal escalation and supports continued operational excellence. Would you be open to a brief call to discuss options?" Options. I love that word. So vague, so desperate, so late. I didn't reply right away. I waited until the next morning, brewed a French press of coffee strong enough to strip paint, and opened a fresh message window. No legalese, no threats, just this. "Hi Meredith, I appreciate your interest in collaboration. I've attached the finalized agreement again, for convenience. As noted, the license renewal must be executed within the remaining operational window. Below is a live countdown to lockout." Then I pasted in the link, a real-time timer I'd coded to tick down, second by second toward digital oblivion. 7 days, 16 hours, 42 minutes, 12 seconds. I even included a cute favicon of a ticking clock, professional but pointed. They didn't respond. At least not immediately. But the warehouse did. By the end of the day, my source at the floor level, Illy, the golden retriever in a hoodie, texted me a photo of 2 pallet bots stuck in a loop, circling the same stack of boxed hairdryers like confused vultures. They keep recalculating their routes. Fulfillment slowed by 18% today. Is that? You, not directly, but yes. I'd written a tiered performance cap into Ruby's firmware years ago, not malicious, just a safety net. When the heartbeat renewal didn't ping, the system would gradually throttle non-priority routes. Inventory updates would lag, internal comms would delay, nothing catastrophic, just friction, noise, doubt. enough to make a client's skin itch. By Wednesday, Eastland Freight was calling to ask why delivery scans were showing a 2-hour lag in 2 test cities. They asked if the system needed a firmware patch. The company said they were investigating. What they meant was they were panicking. The countdown clock was now under 6 days, and they knew it. They tried to reach out again. This time, a lawyer and the CTO joined the call request. I declined. Instead, I sent a GIF. A ticking time bomb, just for fun. It was around then that my best friend Molly, the only person who knew the whole saga, called and said, "Okay, this is starting to sound like a Netflix doc waiting to happen. You sure you want to burn the whole damn place down?" I could hear the worry in her voice. The hesitation. That little human part that still believes if you play fair, the universe rewards you. "They stole from you, yes," she said, "but if you don't throw them a rope now, they're gonna drown." I took a breath, stared at the contract on my screen, and replied, "They're not drowning. They're choking on the gold they tried to steal. I am the rope. They just don't want to pay for it." That shut her up. And I appreciated that, because I didn't need doubt, I needed focus. I checked Ruby's dashboard again, CPU load at 89%, system stable, but the performance caps were working, like a python wrapping tighter by the hour. I didn't enjoy it. Okay, maybe a little. But this wasn't revenge. This was enforcement. They had 7 days. 7 days to accept that what they called redundant was actually the single most valuable line item in their operation. 7 days to admit they'd made a mistake. And if they didn't, well, let's just say Ruby had a bedtime coming and no one else knew how to tuck her in. Friday morning, 4:02 a.m., Ruby skipped a heartbeat. Then she skipped them all. No more renewal code. No ping. No handshake. Just a silent command rippling through her system. Stand down. Across a 120,000 square foot warehouse, conveyor belts hissed to a halt. Robots froze mid-route, one of them clutching a tote of weighted blankets like a toddler who fell asleep standing up. Fulfillment queues stopped updating. Item trackers blinked red. Internal logs scrambled themselves into a soup of null values and corrupted timestamps. Ruby didn't crash. She didn't malfunction. She obeyed, exactly as designed. By 6:17 a.m., I was getting the first shaky screenshots from Ali. "Denise, they're freaking out. Ruby's dead silent. They rebooted twice. Nothing is syncing." At 7:02, a warehouse floor manager filed a level 3 emergency incident report, complete loss of coordination across units. Unable to override. ETA for recovery, unknown. At 8:11, Eastland Freight's VP of Operations arrived early for the scheduled rollout review and walked straight into a battlefield of blinking lights, static terminals, and grown adults arguing over whether the word heartbeat had a literal meaning in this context. By 9:30, the client threatened to delay the contract signing. By 10 o'clock, the CTO was screaming into his headset loud enough to clip through warehouse security cams. I was sitting on my porch, watching a squirrel fight a plastic bag, when my phone lit up. Subject: urgent resolution request from Meredith Halloran, General Counsel Denise. We acknowledge and respect your intellectual property claims and sincerely apologize for any previous misunderstandings. We are prepared to offer the full license rate you proposed, along with an additional $25,000 reconciliation fee to restore functionality immediately. Please advise us of your availability. Attached was a PDF, countersigned license agreement, fast-tracked and timestamped 20 minutes prior. It even had the words "without prejudice" in bold. "Legalese for we surrender." I stared at it. It would have been so easy to open, to send the code, to let Ruby breathe again, to be the hero in the 11th hour, ride in like a cybernetic Joan of Arc, deliver salvation, and collect my check. But instead, I let it sit, unread. Unanswered, I closed my laptop. Let them feel it. Let them explain to a furious Fortune 100 client how they accidentally based an $18 million fulfillment system on a borrowed brain they never owned. Let them taste every drop of dismissiveness they fed me over 2 years, every shrugged-off suggestion, every credit stolen, every hallway smirk that said you're lucky to be here. Because I wasn't. They were lucky I hadn't walked out sooner. And now, their empire was held together by duct tape and denial, and both just gave out. It hit the wires by noon. Eastland Freight suspends rollout with company name after critical system failure. Source: client sites lack of infrastructure ownership transparency. Translation: they trusted you and you built your miracle on a ghost. The press pounced. Logistics blogs lit up. Investors freaked out. Their CEO issued a "we remain committed to excellence" statement that read like it had been written by a chatbot on fire. And me? I was in line at Home Depot buying mulch. My phone buzzed at 12:43 p.m., unknown number, Cleveland area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, almost, but something in me wanted to hear it, the voice, the tone, the scrape of failure. I answered, "Denise, it's Mark," pause, "the former CTO. Former. Well, I heard." I said, calm as a glacier. "Rough week?" He let out a nervous chuckle that sounded like dry leaves caught in a box fan. "They canned me 30 minutes after the client pulled out," he said. "Legal's in a panic, board's pissed. Warehouse ops are frozen. Listen, I'm not calling on their behalf. I'm calling because they need you, and they know it." I didn't reply. "I know you've got the license, you've got the leverage. Hell, you've got the system. And if you're willing to come in, even temporarily, they'll make it right." I let that sit for a beat. Then I asked, define, make it right. Whatever you want, name it. I already had, months ago. I just hadn't sent the terms, until now. I emailed over a PDF before we even ended the call. Carter Logic Systems Emergency Technical Consulting Agreement, 6-month contract, triple my previous salary paid in full. Upfront, no NDAs, all development remains property of Carter Logic, direct access to client one office. My own, lockable. He opened it on the call. I heard him whistle low. You really wrote this like a damn warlord. No, I said. I wrote it like someone who's finally being paid for the years she spent carrying your kingdom on her back. Silence. Then, they'll agree. I'll make sure of it. And he did. That Monday morning, I walked into the same building where I'd been fired with a plastic clipboard and a polite smile. Only this time I wasn't wearing a staff badge. My badge said owner. Lee met me at the door, wide-eyed. They really brought you back? No, I said. They rented me. Upstairs, the new acting CTO, some nervous guy from R&D who clearly hadn't read the full brief, tried to give me a rundown of their recovery plan. I let him speak for 3 minutes before I walked to the server, plugged in my secure drive, and revived Ruby with a single key. Heartbeat restored. Sync efficiency climbed from 12% to 99.8% in under 90 seconds. The room exhaled like I'd just cured a terminal illness. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just turned to the team and said, now, here's how we're going to clean up your mess, because I wasn't their employee anymore. I was the specialist. I was the storm they tried to ignore. And now, I was the one writing the damn future. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.